Hello everyone, welcome back to the SMITE Guide to Xing Tian. This is Arena. Now, Nick pointed out, thank you Nick by the way, that I lost my audio track for this. This is not so much that I lost the audio track, I unfortunately just didn't record my microphone. I accidentally hit the turn off the microphone hotkey, which I really need to move. But the video footage is way too useful and significant for me to discard this. So I'm going to do something a little bit different and voice over this, because it is extremely important that I talk about this match in particular. And you'll understand why pretty early on into the match. But I want you to look very carefully at the team compositions right off the top, okay? So right now we've got a pretty standard composition right now, and then we switch into slightly non-standard, but remember that Ravan was formerly a warrior, and a lot of people still play him like this, so at this point I'm not concerned at all. We have a pretty almost standard team composition. We've got good damage here. We have Nemesis who can really help with tanks. We've got Ravan who can play damage or hybrid or defense, however he wants to play. Medusa's really great in Arena as a hunter, and so is Agni. This is the important part. Observe their team composition. 3 mages, 1 hunter, and a warrior. Now, right off the bat, as a support main, I've been doing this for years, I realize that this is one of those very few arena games that Gauntlet of Thebes will not be my second item. Okay? Normally, and I say this a lot, and most other support mains will recommend this as well, normally you purchase your starter item, and then you start working towards Gauntlet of Thebes. This is one of those rare moments where you don't do this. Now, in Conquest and in Slash and everything else, you still would, even with a composition like this, you would still purchase your Gauntlet of Thebes. But because this is Arena, and the damage starts coming out really early, it's constant team fighting, you actually don't necessarily have the luxury of trying to build a Gauntlet of Thebes. So you see me immediately start working for Genji's Guard here. That was a misclick, by the way, for the sprint, and I just use my remaining money for meditation, right? Level 2 meditation, very specifically. Now, this is actually more useful than you would think in Arena, because in the middle of a team fight, especially early on, that can really turn around and save lives, and once you get your meditation to level 3, you're reducing cooldowns as well, which gives you an absolutely massive edge in any team fight. I don't even think I can understate how important that is. Now, if you happen to have 50 gold left over, since you are supposed to be the primary tank for the buffs, it's not necessarily a bad idea to build a single health potion. Now, also notice that we have an opportunity here. Kill the Tiamat. I did not intend to kill the Tiamat there, but it was just a matter of crowd control. And then we killed the Persephone. Now, notice throughout all of that, I really didn't take much damage. They didn't really have much of an opportunity to attack. And yet, I was able to confidently go in there because the only physical damage they have that's a serious threat is Hercules and Apollo. And I'm pretty sure because Hercules is the one frontline on their team that I'm not going to be taking much physical damage later on in the game. Now, also notice that that's one of the rare times that you'll see a Xing Tian use his ult defensively. I was very specifically trying to keep Ravan alive. I was going to go back and finish Genji's Guard there, but I decided not to. I had full health, I had plenty of mana. It really wasn't necessary, and this absolutely bold Nemesis was going for the Persephone. Now, Ravan goes in again. I'm recognizing at this point that I've got a fairly aggressive team composition, although the Medusa running forward and using that ult was incredibly impressive. But I now am understanding and having to come to grips with the fact that my team is very aggressive. This is not a bad thing in this context. Alright, how aggressive you want to be as a team really depends on the enemy composition. The enemy team has so many damage dealers that playing aggressive actually can really work in your advantage. You play aggressive early because they only have the one serious frontliner, and you weaken them down and eliminate them. Unfortunately, there was nothing I could do about that ult, but there you have it. But you want to, weaken them down, you want to get an early lead so you can turn around and pummel them because they only have the one front line. And that's exactly what my team is doing here, and it's vitally important. But at this point, I've finished my Genji's Guard. Look how, little damage I'm taking even from the enemy Agni. I mentioned that before when he tried to do some damage to me on his way out before, and here we are with the same stuff. Notice that again, the Hercules did some damage there, and I'm luring him in for an ult here. That's why I keep looking back at him. if it was not for that Medusa, I would have goofed it because he turned around a little earlier than I was expecting. So random shout out to the Medusa for a really excellent judgment call there. But I wouldn't have made it through that fight. I would have died if I had started working on Gauntlet of Thebes as my second item. That would have been a death for me. Now I'm working on Gauntlet of Thebes at this particular point. And it's at this particular point that the idea that potentially... You'll notice that I was looking at the scoreboard there. If you were paying attention, I'll mention it again when the scoreboard comes back up. But pay attention the next time I open the scoreboard, because right now I'm wondering if Apollo's building tank. I'm not sure. He could still be building hybrid at this point. He does, just spoiler alert, he does wind up building tank later on, which causes huge problems for his team. But I'm starting to readjust how I'm thinking of my build at this point, because there's the possibility that even Apollo won't be building physical damage. And with that being the case, my need for physical protections goes almost down the drain. I'll still be finishing Gauntlet of Thebes because I'll still want a certain amount of physical protection, obviously, but I won't be looking to prioritize it later on in the game. But at this point, I'm not 100% sure that's what's happening. I'm just keeping an eye on the situation. Notice again, see, we have Apollo had the Gauntlet of Thebes. I'm actually going to go back and re-emphasize this. I gotta pause this correctly. But notice the Apollo's build. When we get to that point, and it's going to be right around here. I just want you to be prepared because I mistimed this slightly there. Notice, this is vitally important, the Apollo has Gauntlet of Thebes, and he's going for very clearly Animosity. Now, it is at this point here, as I'm running back to the fountain, that I confirm mentally. The first check I did earlier, it was too quick, there were things going on, I wasn't paying enough attention 100% to the Apollo, right? I wasn't 100% sure. This is my double check right before I go into the fountain, and this is confirming to me right here. This is specifically what I'm looking at, is the Apollo. I am looking at no one else. I am seeing this Benevolence. I am seeing Gauntlet of Thebes. This wasn't what tipped me off. It's this right here. Whatever this is going to be a defensive item. Guaranteed. At this point, I now know that Apollo is going to be building tank. What does this mean for me as a support? What would this mean for you as a support? Well, as I mentioned earlier, this means that Apollo is not going to be doing very much in the way of physical damage. Neither is Hercules. Hercules is clearly also building full tank here. I don't need much magical protections. Gauntlet of Thebes will probably provide me with all the magic protections I will need throughout the game, honestly. I do wind up building Mystical Mail a little later on for some damage and just a little bit of extra physical protection because I'm taking a little more than I'd like, but the decision of Apollo in this match to go tank and build, of all things, Animosity, which does magic damage, absolutely decimates his team's ability to deal with Raven and myself. We are both able to just walk away with primarily magic protections and not have a problem. And this is actually why I wanted to keep to this footage. I'm just voicing over this, is because this is such a rare situation. I don't see this kind of insanity very often. Now, it's not necessarily the fact that Apollo can't play tank or he can't use Animosity effectively. That's not what I'm saying here, and I want to make that distinction extremely clear. Also, I was needlessly aggressive there. I did not need to be that far up. Just brief moment there that I was way too aggressive on that one. I'm getting overconfident at this point. Which is something you should not be doing as a support. Anyways, back to the main point. The issue isn't that Apollo is building tank, building Animosity. The issue is that he's building tank Animosity into a primarily magic damage composition. There's no physical damage here. I mentioned, well, when I originally recorded this, I mentioned that even if he built Shinsai's, that would have been incredibly powerful because that's physical damage, and would have forced Ravan and I to build more physical protections, but he never does. Notice, by the way, I am working on the Mystical Mail because I am looking to be more aggressive. We're ahead. They're a high damage comp. I've realized by this point that I'm not really going to be taking much physical damage, so I want Mystical Mail for just a splash more of physical protections, but primarily for the damage output here. And I should have backed off beforehand, by the way. I should not have tried to chase down the enemy Persephone. That was a mistake. I do get out, but I shouldn't have been there in the first place. I do get out in time. It's not a big deal. I just overstayed a little bit, but this is a trending mistake for me in this match is that I overstay quite often. You'll see it more often as the... you'll see it 2 or 3 more times throughout the match, and I'll point it out as I go, because I have to be more mindful of that. I have a tendency to be doing that recently, because I've been trying to get my non-guardians to diamond, so I'm playing more aggressively than I normally would as a support. And notice that I'm diving here for the Tiamat. This is not yet a mistake, because I have my ult. She used her ult there. I should have just... I continued pushing for a little bit, but then I realized that I was never going to kill her and turn back around. That was the correct choice. Ravon is going to die here to the Apollo ults, if I remember correctly. Yes. And then I'm going to... No, wait. He does not. Oh, yeah, and I tried to block that, but I missed because of that stupid Minotaur. Now, I don't actually know how Ravon wound up over here. I mentioned at the time that I was recording this that it was a complete mystery to me. He should have just been going straight back. I understand Apollo probably did ult him, but I'm still not 100% sure how he got over there specifically. Now at this point I'm looking to just try to save Medusa's life. I'm trying to stop the Persephone. Unfortunately, I underestimated the amount of damage that Apollo would be dealing to Medusa, and I die as a result. Honestly, in that particular situation, I should have recognized that Medusa was doomed and just walked away. I can't do that. That's always been a problem for me as a support. I cannot see an ally dying and walk away. I have once or twice in my life been able to do that, but I can't give up on my allies like that. It's a problem. You should not be doing that as a support. That was a situation where I should have recognized, okay, Medusa's doomed, I should be backing off, because I cannot save her, and there's no point in trying. I don't do that often enough. I need to develop that at some point here. It's my fatal flaw as a support. It gets me killed a lot. Now, at this particular point, I was paying too much attention to the Tiamat, didn't notice the Hercules, and this is the point at which I'm really clicking that even though the enemy team isn't doing substantial amounts of physical damage, my allies aren't building, well, except for Ravon, aren't building protections like that, of course. Why would they? So I need to kind of be back and paying attention to my team here a little bit more. I was getting too aggressive, I was getting too cocky, I was going for kills, and you really shouldn't be doing that as a support. The enemy team composition and Apollo's choices are very weird. I die here because I'm chasing the Agni. Same exact thing. I shouldn't have been chasing the Agni. Absolutely rookie mistake there on my part. But at this point, I'm double-checking to confirm that, yes, the enemy front line is building the way I thought they were. Apollo is building protections. Hercules is building protections. It is going pretty much exactly how I expected it to. Now, the Apollo should not have gone on the Medusa here, because it was on our side of the field, and the Persephone was backing off very clearly. Now, the Persephone turns around to try to save him, which is a fatal mistake of hers. Notice that I made the attempt for the kill. She got away. I dropped it. I went for the Agni because we knew we could get him. I actually didn't intend to kill him there. I was not expecting him to die there because I only have Mystical Mail as a damage source. I was actually expecting him to survive that and get killed by an ally. It was not an intentional kill there. I was actually just trying to line him up for a death, and just wound up accidentally doing enough damage to kill him. But at this particular point, now also I want to point out, notice that the Hercules just pushed me back towards his team. He does this consistently throughout the match. This is actually, I believe, the third time he's done that so far this match, if you've been paying attention, second or third. And I talk about this at the end of the game a little bit, but he should not be doing that. If you're Hercules, you should not be trying to pull the enemy tank in unless they are low on health or low on mana, and you can guarantee that your allies can kill them, because otherwise, if my allies had been nearby, that was an opportunity to go on the Tiamat. Now, at this point, I'm just going to go in on the Tiamat. I blink in. I'm going to try to get this Tiamat killed. My Furious Roar actually killed her there with, I believe, its final tick, and then I don't need to be there, but I was double-checking to make sure that they had her. I'm paranoid. I'm sorry. But at this point, now we're just pushing forward. But I'm really not expecting much at this point. It is the 2 tanks. I'm now just floating around trying to get Tiamat here, trying to salvage this. Unfortunately, underestimated my allies being there. Ravon was there, but nobody else was. Medusa was getting killed. It's not really her fault. And then I die as a result because I did not double-check to see that my allies were behind me before ulting. That is, again, another error on my part. Very common. Here, this is a moment where the Ravon, for some reason, complains about Persephone dashing when I was trying to line up a 4-man slap and just didn't realize my allies weren't behind me, which happens as a sport. You get distracted with your current goal and you don't necessarily 100% pay attention to where your allies are. Happens to everyone. Pretty common mistake. I do it quite often. At this particular point, I'm just trying to make sure that everyone's going to get out of here alive, because I don't think we should be fighting at this point with the Minotaur. I'm trying to get Medusa out of here, because she really should have been going for the Minotaur, and at this point I'm trying to body block for her, which doesn't happen because Tiamat just jumps right onto her and ults her, but that's what I was trying to do, is get her out. Again, she should not have been trying to get kills there. She should have been going for the Minotaur as the hunter. That is one of her big jobs in Arena. Some people will disagree with me on this, but it is a single target that requires a lot of single target damage output, and hunters are really good at that. Now, I died because, unfortunately, again, I was trying to save the Medusa there, and it just didn't happen, and I died for that, basically. But she just overstayed, and I was just trying to keep her alive as well. Now, I built the Amulet of the Fortress here, by the way, because, obviously, the enemy team is, primarily doing magic damage, and this is also where I realize, because yes, I'm a dumbcough, that it does not reduce your physical protections when it increases your magic ones. So it's actually a better item than I expected. I still think it's overpurchased, don't get me wrong, but it's not as bad as I expected it to be. And at this point, I'm just trying to get Nemesis out. Nemesis gets out. Now I'm trying to get Ravon out, because for some reason Ravon went in. I think he was trying to help me. The Medusa is making the correct call here. She is yelling retreat at the top of her lungs. She is correct. I am trying to get Ravon out at this particular point in time. He still has a good shot at getting out because he's been building tanky. I now need to get out because I'm going to die, but Ravon, as you can see from the minimap in the upper right corner, Ravon has gotten out, so my job was completed. And my allies pick up some kills here, which is absolutely fantastic, and now I'm going to be trying to save Nemesis. This is another situation where it's very unlikely that she would have survived, except the Agni backed off. If he had kept on going, they probably would have taken her out, but he would have died as well anyways. But at this particular point, again, I'm just trying to get the Ravon out, because we are now a 4v, I think, what is this, 4v3? 4v4? I'm sorry, a 2v4? 2v3? It was a 2v3. And I knew that was a bad situation, and he needed to get out. At this point, I'm going to try and kill the Tiamat. I should not, by the way, have done that. I should have tried to body block for the Medusa. But it's Apollo, so that's fine. But if Apollo hadn't been building tank, the smarter decision there would have been to body block for Medusa. I can't do anything about the Agni because of his range and just the combo. There's literally nothing I can do there. So we just back off. Notice that I finished with Pridwin for just a splash more physical damage protection, because I was taking a little bit more damage from the Apollo than I was expecting, which is actually why... and I type right here to remind them that Apollo has physical protections as well, that Apollo is building frontline, because I'm not sure my allies have necessarily registered that. Actually, you'll actually notice Ravon talking about that, and I'm going to, the next time the scoreboard comes up, oh, here we go, wait, that was the scoreboard I needed. Now, the reason, what Ravon was specifically talking about is the fact that none of my allies, really, none of our allies, come on. I just wanted to clean. There we go. So, notice that Nemesis is really the only one... Well, no, actually. I'm not sure what Ravon was talking about at this point. Because Nemesis actually has percentage penetration, and she's got chin size, which is excellent. Medusa actually has dominance, and while she could do with a... Well, she's got Heartseeker, so she's actually running, I think, 35% pen on her auto attacks, and it's 20% pen on her abilities, plus the 30 flat from these two. Agni does not have enough penetration, but he's the only one on the team that deals damage that doesn't have the penetration he needs. So Ravon actually was emitting a team-wide statement when he really didn't have any business to be, because only the Agni does not have anywhere approaching the appropriate amount of penetration. Nemesis is 20%, which is decent. It's about what you want for two tanks on the enemy team, so that's fine. Medusa's running 35% on her auto attacks, which is fine because she's a hunter, and 20% on her abilities, so she's all set. It's only really the Agni that doesn't have enough penetrations. So the Ravon's callout was kind of unnecessary, to be completely honest, because our allies were already on that. And again, notice Hercules pushes me in, and I use that opportunity to launch a decent ult. Now I got somebody's beads in there too. I can't remember whose it was. But I got somebody's beads. I threw Apollo out. See, here's Ravon throwing out Gitchins and Soul Reaver. Our allies, as I just covered, already has some of this. So he's just getting anxious for no reason. I recognize at this point that Apollo could probably die, but I also realize that Agni is about to slap my allies, so I need to stop that. Apollo actually, by the way, goes in, which is fairly interesting. He has healed up from his various items that, heal him. I chase him for a little while, but I realize that that's never going to happen. Because Nemesis went on to Tiamat instead of Apollo. If she'd gone on Apollo, I would have kept chasing him, but that clearly wasn't happening. And then Persephone, she overcommits for that Nemesis. I'm going to try to chase her down briefly here, but then I kind of realize that this isn't really going to happen. I used my ult as a last-ditch effort, but that was clearly just a waste of an ult, even if she hadn't dashed. I totally underestimated her ability to weave around that. That was a complete goof on my part. I shouldn't have even been chasing her that far in the first place, and I knew that at the time. When I was recording the episode, I acknowledged that I should not have been chasing her as I was chasing her. I just wanted... she kind of pissed me off with that kill, so I wanted revenge, and it just wasn't going to happen. And then at this point, I'm just looking to keep Ravon out of trouble, but he really doesn't need it, because he got out on his own. But I wanted to be there just in case, do the double jump forward, make sure he's fine. Again, the Hercules pushes me towards the enemy. I accidentally steal Persephone, but I was looking to crowd control her, so Medusa could confirm that if she needed it. Turns out my mystical mail killed her, but that's beside the point. That's not really something I chose, and then we absolutely just win here. Now, again, I want to recap as the scoreboard goes down, and I yak at the end of the game for the next 10 minutes. I'll probably cut it short before then, because I've already mentioned a lot of the points, but the main issue here for the enemy team was Apollo's decision to build for animosity, thereby completely wiping out his ability to deal physical damage. And I'm going to be pausing it right here so that way I don't have my mouse in game flying around and distracting you and distracting me for that matter. And I can actually just point at things, because I want to point with this mouse here and not have you have the in-game mouse pointing around at stuff as well, and you getting, confused and everything, because I know I will. Which mouse is my mouse? But again, Apollo went for animosity here, and, I mean, it's a good support build for Apollo, don't get me wrong. But he's doing no physical damage, and that's what his team needed. And now, what's fairly interesting is Ravon builds too much physical protections here, to be completely honest. He builds Breastplate of Valor, and frankly, he would have been better off with Pridwin. Instead of that. That's my only real complaint about the Ravon's build, in all honesty. Otherwise, his build is fine. It looks kind of like to me that he looked at the enemy team composition, went for Breastplate of Valor, and then realized, oh, wait a minute, the Apollo is building tank. And he probably realized that at about the point of Berserker's Shield, but Berserker's Shield is incredibly useful on Ravon, so he probably didn't want to sacrifice that, but he really should have built Pridwin instead of the Breastplate of Valor. But otherwise, our allies did really well. The Agni, interestingly enough, did go for Genji's Guard at the end. Great choice, don't get me wrong, this was a strong pick, but as Ravon pointed out, he did want a little bit, he was wanting a little bit more magic protection. Nemesis built Mantle of Discord, probably could have also gotten away with Genji's Guard, but that comes down to, maybe she was looking for the passive as well. I know the passive is incredibly valuable to assassins because it does stun everyone around you and gives you a second of free crowd control immunity when you're low on health, giving you the opportunity in Nemesis' case to activate your shield or use your dash or get, otherwise get out of there. So I can understand why she might want this over Genji's Guard. It really depends on her game style, her gameplay. But yeah, that is a huge part of why the enemy team lost, and this is why I really wanted to keep this footage. You don't see tank hunters very often, especially not in Arena, and you don't see compositions like this happen very often in Arena. And this is such a unique scenario that I really wanted to talk about, because it is the one scenario, again, this is Arena specific. In all other modes, you're still looking to build Gauntlet of Thebes second, but in Arena, when you come across a team composition like this, that is so heavily damage dealing, you want to build Gauntlet of Thebes third. You want to protect yourself against the dominant damage style first, so you live long enough to build those stacks. Okay? And this is just such a unique scenario that I want this out there. I want you to just really understand the importance of this, and to not kind of To warn you of the dangers, really, of having one support build. There are some characters and some classes that can get away with having one really consistent build. Hunters' builds aren't really that varied a lot of the time, depending on the season. But most hunter builds are pretty similar. They might differ by an item or two, but overall, by and large, they're pretty similar. Mage builds in this season seem to be overall pretty similar. You'll notice a lot of similarities between Tiamat, Persephone, and Agni. Tiamat built Genji's Guard, but look at the consistency here. You've got Spear of Desolation on all three of them. You've got Soul Reaver on two of them here. You have the Amulet on two of them here. I can't remember what it's called. You've got Divine Ruin on two of them here. You've got Rod of Tahutia on all three of them. You've got Soul Gem on two of them. You've got Chronos Pendant on... No, Chronos Pendant is only on one of them. Pardon me. But you can see here there's just so much similarity between the builds. The only real difference here is when they built them, except for Spear of Desolation, which they all built as their second item for some unholy reason. But you can see how similar a lot of mage builds really are. Tiamat can build a couple of protection items. You'll notice she's got E-Staff as well. She typically can tend to get away with a couple of defensive items because her ground form is much more defensive. But the Persephone and the Agni have extremely similar builds. Agni just built... what is that called? Just built the Penetration Diamond... Obsidian Shard. Thank you, brain. Instead of... Soul Reaver. That's the only difference between these two builds, because they play classic mage style, I would say. Supports can't get away with a consistent build. In fact, I'll go out so far as to say, other than Gauntlet of Thebes being a staple right now, and probably will remain a staple for all of support time, as long as it exists the way it does, that's the only item I would say absolutely build every time. Gauntlet of Thebes. Somewhere. Again, usually it's going to be your second item, but there are situations like this arena match where it is not your second item. And I just want to really make sure you're aware that you kind of have to customize your build as you go through the match. Every game, every time you play support. Gauntlet of Thebes is going to be in there somewhere, but what starting item you want to have differs. For example, Hercules built the War Flag. I built Sentinel's Gift. Maybe you prefer Animosity. It depends on your particular support, whatever it is. Your starter item will probably change depending on how you want to play that support role, but you're always going to have Gauntlet of Thebes. If you're playing support, you're building Gauntlet of Thebes, and your other 5 items, including your starter, those are going to be according to the situation, according to how you personally play. It's going to be mixed up a lot, and I just want to make you aware of that. I also want to warn you away of the really serious pitfall of taking a non-Guardian and building it Guardian, because the Apollo is a great example of the dangers of that. You really have to be aware of the fact that when you're taking a non-Guardian into the support role, that can change how your enemy can react. They'll react in very specific ways, and if you're really good, you can take advantage of that, but more often than not, because your allies are out of your control, it's going to hurt you, and you have to be very careful when you decide, hey, I'm going to play this character out of role. Okay, why are you playing this character in the support role? Can this character support? Now, that's actually something that I want to take a brief moment to talk about Apollo in the support role specifically. Apollo does have some decent crowd control available to him. He's got a pop-up with his dash if he dashes through you. He's got his very short Mesmerize on his song. And he's got a pop-up on his ult. There are a couple of problems with Apollo as a support. Also, he gets physical protection boost when he sings for a few seconds, but that's not important. The problem with his ult being a form of crowd control is it is hideously expensive in terms of mana use everywhere except arena, because each time each second you're flying in the air, that's 10 mana down. I believe it's 10 mana. They could have changed it since the last time I checked. It's been a while since I've used Apollo. But nevertheless, that can be very expensive, especially if you're waiting to line up that perfect pop-up. It can get very expensive mana-wise very quickly. Second, his Mesmerize is very short. We're not talking Kumbhakarna levels of Mez here. It's a very short Mez. And the amount of time the protections last isn't very long either. So that's pretty risky, especially to try to rely on that. Third, his first ability is just a plain old damage-dealing shot, which does you no good as a support. There's literally no point there. Yes, there are certain Guardians that have a primarily damaging first ability. You could even argue Xing Tian does, but Xing Tian's Furious Roar reduces basic attack damage output by those affected. Anyways, leaving that aside, the dash is decent. It's a pretty short dash overall. The pop-up isn't very big, but it's okay. But again, the problem here wasn't playing Apollo in the support role. He's one of the very few hunters I'll argue can do so, actually. It was the fact that he chose to do it with 3 mages in his team. He should have recognized, hey, look, we've got 3 mages, maybe building Animosity is a bad idea. Should have gone hybrid. Should have built that Shifter's Shield, should have built some crits, just run with that. And that's really what it came down to. But overall, that's where I want to leave this. Thank you all very much for joining me. If you prefer the voiceover method, I can do this more often. I can do this with matches that I play with my family if you want, or something, depending on, the situation. I can do this with gameplay videos of other people if you want. Comment on the things they do right and the things they do wrong. If you want that, throw out ideas. I don't have a problem with voiceovers. I like voiceovers because I think I get to kind of get a macro view of the match. In this particular case, I knew ahead of time what was going to happen, and I can tell you exactly what I was thinking, and I could pause serious moments where I can't pause a regular game. So there are advantages to voiceover, but if you like the voiceover and you want to see more voiceovers, or if you prefer voiceovers to the regular, just let me know in the comment section below. I'll keep it in mind. So this is not only did I want to keep this footage because of how unique the match was, and the ability to bring up very important topics for a support player, but it was also an exciting opportunity to try the voiceover method, and I like it. But if you don't, or if you want to reserve it for very specific scenarios, let me know. Communicate with me. That's all I want. Let me know what you want. That's all I need. So, regardless, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, requests, or opinions, please leave them down in the comment section below. And have a great 24 hours.